Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give everyone a few minutes to pop on. I want to make sure you can hear me. So if someone can drop in the chat if you can hear me, I just want to make sure sound is working well. All right, perfect. So I'll be starting in just a few minutes, so just hang out. If you're on your computer, the chat box is likely to the right side of your screen, and if you're on your phone, it's probably to the bottom. So feel free to pop any questions or comments in there, and I will do my best to answer them throughout. All right. Hello, everyone. I was just waiting for everyone to be able to hop on. So we can go ahead and get started. Can you guys hear me now? Just want to make sure that sound is working. So if you're just joining, feel free to post any comments or questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those. And the chat, if you're on your computer, should be on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you're on your phone, it should be, I think, at the bottom. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm super excited. Thanks for joining today to talk about gut health, which is one of my favorite topics. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so Inside Out Healing, your guide to a healthier gut and happier you. This is a little about me. So my name is Dr. Wright. If I haven't met you or seen you before, I am a naturopathic doctor. Um, I really want to, always address the root cause of your conditions and help you heal with the most natural ways possible, or whatever, gets you feeling your best. All right, so things that we'll talk about today, signs and symptoms of imbalances that might be in your gut, common causes of these digestive issues, how to test the gut microbiome and get to the root cause of your digestive concerns, and then how to support your gut health to optimize your overall health. Let me preface this with there is so much information about gut health. And so I really wanted to touch on some of the, I think, most important things or key takeaways to really be able to support your gut health, which really plays a role in your overall health, which we'll talk about. But there's so much more. There's so much more we could go into. So this is just, we're skimming the surface with some of the big hitters. Okay, so why gut health matters. One of the most important organs for overall optimal health is your gut. It plays a role in so many different aspects of your body, some including, so brain health, absolutely. There's actually something called LPS, which is lipopolysaccharide that can be released from your gut if there's inflammation or leaky gut or something like that, and it actually increases inflammation in your brain, which we don't want that, right? So with that, it can increase the risk of any neurodegenerative diseases. So there is a strong link between gut health and brain health. It also plays a role in your overall mental health. So actually up to 90+% of serotonin, which is one of our sort of happy neurotransmitter hormones, is made in the gut, along with other neurotransmitters. You might have heard of the gut-brain axis and sort of how that's connected. So we'll go into that a little bit later, but there's a very strong correlation to your gut microbiome and mental health. Also affects your metabolism. So if you have low gut diversity, so basically an imbalance in the bacteria, it can be associated with insulin resistance, increased risk of like diabetes, blood sugar issues, weight gain, and inflammation. Hormone health plays a key role in hormone health as well. So the gut microbiome actually influences hormone production, regulation, and detoxification. There's something called the estrobolome in the gut, and it's a collection of specific gut bacteria and microbes that metabolize estrogen. So basically, you might have heard of estrogen dominance, where maybe estrogen's a little bit too high or imbalanced. And a lot of this actually can be related to the gut and it's not functioning properly or not well balanced. So it affects that. And then a little bit on thyroid too. So one of your active thyroid hormones is called T3. And then the inactive, more inactive, is called T4. And actually the T4, which is produced in your thyroid, has to get converted into T3. And about 20% of that conversion happens in the gut. So if your gut's not happy, then you're probably not getting that full active thyroid hormone that you need. It affects your immune system. So 70 to 80% of your immune system is actually in your gut. So if you get sick frequently, it could be related to your gut. And definitely autoimmune conditions. There's a lot of research showing that up to 80% of autoimmune conditions actually have a gut-related component. So really, this is just to show that your gut health affects almost every aspect and every organ of your body. Hippocrates, which is that little picture, he was a ancient Greek physician and philosopher, and he has a famous quote that says, "All disease begins in the gut," and honestly, it couldn't be more true. All right. So we talked about, what the gut could affect. Let's talk about what the actual gut microbiome is. So the gut as a whole refers to sort of your digestive tract, and this includes almost anything that food touches. So you put food in your mouth, and then it goes down your esophagus, into your stomach, into your small and large intestines, and then through the rectum and anus. There are some other accessory digestion organs like the liver, the gallbladder, pancreas. Those are very important as well, but today we're more so talking about the gut microbiome, and that is mostly in the small and large intestines. The gut microbiome is made up of approximately 100 trillion microorganisms. This includes different bacteria, viruses, fungi, other stuff like that. Like I said, mostly in your large intestine. Your gut microbiome plays a key role in digestion and nutrient absorption. So it helps to break down food, basically makes sure that you get your essential vitamins and nutrients, and overall, like we talked about, everything else in the body. Changes in your gut microbiome can increase the risk of certain chronic conditions. This could be things like diabetes, heart disease, cancers, mental health conditions, autoimmunity. And actually, just a fun fact, your gut has more microbial cells than human cells, meaning that you're actually more microbe than human. All right, let's get into the gut-brain connection. So this is otherwise known as the gut-brain axis, and a lot of people refer to the gut as your second brain. So the vagus nerve is one of the main nerves that travels from your head all the way down to your gut and back and forth. It is in charge of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming nervous system. So it affects your rest and digest, meaning when you're sort of in your calm state and easily able to digest food and function properly. The body really needs to be in that calm state to be able to properly digest and function. The gut bacteria produces neurotransmitters, like we talked about serotonin, but also some dopamine, GABA, a few others. And then really stress has such a big role on your gut. So chronic stress can lead to elevated cortisol levels, which can actually affect the gut lining, which could be called leaky gut, which we will get into later. This can trigger more inflammation, which can worsen the stress response. And then it's just a vicious cycle. And that's sort of what this picture is showing. So the vagus nerve is going, back and forth between the gut. So that's bidirectional. It goes both ways. And then dysbiosis, meaning an imbalance in that gut bacteria, is sort of at the bottom of that circle. And then neuro mediators, which means, those neurotransmitters and feel good hormones on the other side. So when one of them is unhappy, the other one is unhappy. So two-way street, like I said, stressed gut equals stressed hormones and brain. This is oftentimes also why if you're feeling more stressed, maybe, more anxious or something big is going on and you have a lot of gut symptoms, this is exactly why that's happening, because there is that direct connection between the gut and the brain. A lot of people will have maybe changes in bowel movements, or maybe their stomach will feel a little upset and then they'll have a loose stool. So that's totally legit, and this is exactly why. Okay. All right, so now let's get into some signs and symptoms of an unhealthy gut. So what might be going on symptom-wise that you think, oh, maybe I have, something going on in my gut and I need to look into that. So some common symptoms, anything digestive. So bloating and gas, maybe some stomach pain, maybe feeling nauseous, maybe even vomiting sometimes, definitely heartburn or acid reflux. And then definitely changes in bowel movements. So this could be more diarrhea, constipation. It could even be alternating. If you ever notice, blood or mucus or undigested food in your stool, or bowel movements less than once per day. And I put that on there because I think it's not well known that you should actually be having bowel movements at least once a day for optimal gut health. I put the Bristol stool chart down here. So that's that picture, that lovely picture. And that's basically showing the different types of bowel movements and stool that you can have and what it might signify. So you can sort of just look through it and see what your normal might be. And if it's not sort of that 4, 3, those two are the most normal. If it's not in that category, then it might mean that you need a little bit more support with your gut. Okay, and then some more unexpected symptoms. So things that maybe you have going on, but you wouldn't necessarily directly correlate to your gut. Feeling tired, so common with gut issues. Feeling like more brain fog or difficulty with concentrating. Definitely the mood changes. We talked about that a little bit. Skin has such a direct correlation with the gut. If your gut has inflammation, it's going to come out on your skin. So skin rashes, I see very commonly with like eczema and psoriasis maybe, and then acne also. Headaches and migraines, also very common. Frequent infections, so if you're getting sick all the time, might be something going on in the gut. Weight gain or difficulty losing weight. If you have either, a bad bug in your gut or a lot of inflammation, oftentimes your body holds on to that weight, like it doesn't feel safe enough to lose that weight. And so that could be an indicator. We talked about the autoimmune conditions. Allergies, there's actually a big link to your gut microbiome and allergies. So that could be like seasonal allergies or maybe food allergies, sugar cravings, and then joint pain and like swelling or overall feeling puffy. I oftentimes see with gut stuff as well. I have a question. Is it a myth that you need multiple bowel movements per day? You definitely don't need them. In theory, you could potentially have a bowel movement after every meal, every time you eat. But at least if you're having one a day, that's known to be healthy. Good question. Okay, so let's talk about common causes of gut imbalances. So maybe you have some of those symptoms, and these are some of the things that could potentially be going on. The biggest one that I see is gut dysbiosis, meaning an imbalance in the gut microbiome. Other things that could be happening, infection. So if you actually have like a parasite or maybe a bad bacteria that's in there. Candida or yeast is pretty common. And then SIBO is a big one that I see as well, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Basically where there's a bad bacteria or two that overgrow in the small intestine specifically and cause a lot of symptoms. Food sensitivities or allergies could definitely trigger some inflammation, some irritation with the gut. And then let's get into leaky gut. So leaky gut is not a technical medical term, but it is becoming more and more well known that basically the lining of your gut can become more permeable. So that's what this photo is over here. So on the left-hand side is a normal gut, where basically the gut lining is those little sort of peachish pink cells. And then you can see there's healthy tight junctions. Tight junctions are what hold the gut lining together, and it should be tight, basically like nothing can get through. And what happens with inflammation, for whatever the reason, it actually comes apart a little bit, and then different particles of bacteria or food or whatever it might be can actually get through the gut lining into the rest of your body where it's not supposed to be. And that's what we call leaky gut. So on the right hand side of that photo, you can see they're not next to each other and different things are able to get through. So things that can cause this, there are quite a few, but some of the big ones are definitely diet. So if your diet is not well-rounded, if you have maybe lower fiber, high sugar and refined carbs, high processed foods, a lot of alcohol that can affect it. There's some research showing with artificial sweeteners like aspartame and sucralose that can disrupt the gut microbiome and the leaky gut. Definitely some toxins, unfortunately, which we're all exposed to on a daily basis, but pesticides, heavy metals, molds, fragrance stuff in our products. So minimizing that is helpful. And then certain medications like birth control is known to do this, antibiotics, PPIs, which is usually more for like heartburn or acid reflux, and then NSAIDs, things like ibuprofen can affect that. The other big one, which we touched on with the gut-brain axis, is chronic stress. So that definitely affects the body's ability to digest and absorb and can contribute to the leaky gut and imbalances in the bacteria. I put a little note with IBD. So there are definitely other things that can cause issues in the gut. Some of these are more oftentimes medical conditions that can sometimes be diagnosed by a GI doctor or with additional testing. So irritable bowel disease is an autoimmune condition in the gut. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is another one. Celiac disease, where you have an autoimmune condition where you can't tolerate gluten at all. So those are also important things if you are having gut symptoms to be ruled out. So just a note there. All right, let's talk about testing. So what can we do if you have some of these symptoms and you're maybe worried about your gut health or you want to look more into it? What kind of tests can we do? So one of them is food sensitivities. So, and I'll tell you guys a little bit how when I see someone with some gut issues, what I look for and to determine what type of tests. If you are having symptoms that are more correlated to after eating, but it's maybe not every meal, it seems to be maybe a couple foods in particular that seem to trigger it. Maybe it's more of a food sensitivity where your body is reacting to a specific food, maybe like gluten or dairy or something like that. That's when a food sensitivity test could be helpful to see if there is one or two or multiple foods in specific that your body is reacting to and it's causing inflammation. SIBO breath test and H. pylori breath test. H. pylori is a relatively common bacteria in the stomach that can cause usually more like stomach pain or heartburn. So that's a breath test you could do. SIBO breath test. SIBO is the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The most common symptoms of that are going to be more bloating and gas, sometimes some pain with it, changes in bowel movements. So if someone has a ton of bloating and it's no matter what they eat, maybe it's worse throughout the day, that could be a sign of SIBO, and that might be a good test to look into. And then stool testing is so comprehensive and might even give you the most information out of all of these. So that's going to look at your gut microbiome. It's going to look for any type of infections, including parasites, yeasts. It also looks for inflammatory markers and also markers of leaky gut. So gives you more of a comprehensive look on the gut and what's going on in there. And then the blood tests you can do. So you can look at celiac and then the like autoimmune conditions in your gut. Oftentimes a GI doctor will also, if you're having significant symptoms, do, colonoscopies, endoscopies, a full workup there. And I just want to stress the importance of if you are having a lot of gut symptoms, that's always good to rule out those other conditions. And then we can dive a little bit deeper into the gut microbiome and maybe what else might be going on in there. And then this is just a little sort of cartoon. New technology can show us what is going on inside our gut. So that's the stool testing. And it's basically, these are all the little gut microbiomes and what they're saying. So one of them says, I love carrots. Another one is like, there's so much gum in here, so don't swallow gum. And then another one, I'm actually a microbe that scientists thought was only found in badgers. So just a little funny comic there. All right, let's get more into stool testing specifically. So there are a ton of different stool tests that you can do, but the gut zoomer is a specific one that I really like because I think it's so comprehensive and gives you the most information. So the gut zoomer is a comprehensive stool test. It looks at the health of your gut microbiome and how it affects all of your other sort of organs and predisposes you to maybe other conditions. It analyzes over 300 microorganisms and then some inflammatory markers and other stuff. So it assesses for the balance of sort of the good bacteria, the beneficial, and maybe the harmful, the ones that shouldn't be there as much. It also looks at your digestive function, so different digestive enzymes or markers, sort of seeing if you're able to absorb your food and digest your food as well as you should be able to. It looks at some inflammatory markers, so any signs of inflammation in the gut, and then the gut barrier integrity. So this is basically measuring that permeability of the lining. So if you have leaky gut. The reason that these are so beneficial is because it allows you to specialize treatment based on what's going on specifically in your gut, because that could be different than, your friend or your neighbor or someone. Even if you have the same symptoms, your treatment might need to be different to really heal the gut. And this could be, targeted probiotics, maybe dietary changes, maybe some other supplements, but it really gives you more an individualized approach to your gut health. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys what a sample stool test report looks like. I know, obviously, it says sample very large, which is a little distracting. But mostly I just wanted you guys to be able to see how much information you get from this one test. So on that first left-hand side of the screen is sort of showing the overview. And this looks at a few different markers of your gut diversity, meaning do you have a good diversity, a good population of those bacteria? And that'll sort of break it down into different categories for you. It also looks at the gut commensals. And this is where it's really cool. It relates your specific gut microbiome, where it's at right now, to different conditions. For example, SIBO, so this sample patient had a little bit high on the SIBO, meaning that if their gut microbiome continues at it as it is currently, it could potentially lead to SIBO, or it could signify that maybe that is going on a little bit. So it doesn't diagnose it, but it definitely shows you how your gut relates to different organ systems and conditions, which is really cool. On the right-hand side of this, it's looking at your gut microbiome. So it breaks down so many hundreds probably of the specific bacteria that are in your gut microbiome. And it'll tell you if some of them are too high or too low. So this is really cool to see if you have any that you might want to support specifically with a probiotic, and again, one that's more individualized to you, or if maybe there's a bacteria that's a little bit too high and we need to do something to bring it down. So I mean, it's so in depth. It gives you so much information about your gut. And this, so I just took a screenshot of one of the pages, and I think there were 4 or 5 of just the gut microbiome alone. This next page is looking at gut pathogens on the left-hand side. So that's looking at if you have actually any, bad bacteria or parasites in there. Things like C. diff you might have heard of, or E. coli. Parasites, a lot of people talk about with parasite cleanses. I always recommend doing a stool test first if you think you might have parasites, because if you don't, then you don't necessarily need that treatment, and sometimes it can harm your gut also. So this gives you all of that information. Down here on the right-hand side, it says like Candida albicans. So that's a common yeast that can come up positive. So it really goes through all the different categories there. We have some inflammation markers on the left-hand side. Calprotectin is a pretty common one. We have a couple others. Fecal eosinophil protein X, that usually looks for more like of an allergic reaction, maybe a histamine response in your gut going on. Next, we have some of the digestive insufficiency and malabsorption. So looking if you're actually able to break down your food and absorb the nutrients from it. Let's see. On the right-hand side, we have some other markers. Short-chain fatty acids are so important for your overall gut health. And these are really from mostly fiber, getting good fiber in your diet. And so oftentimes we'll see some imbalance in those. So we know we need to support the gut in that way. And then some other markers, fecal occult blood. So it looks for any blood in your stool. And then anti-gliadin has to do with wheat. So sort of a screening marker to see if there's maybe an intolerance to wheat. And then the fecal zonulin is a really cool one. That's more the marker for leaky gut. The SIGA is looking more at the immune system in your gut. And yeah, so like I said, so comprehensive, goes through a bunch of different markers and really breaks it down individualized to you and what's going on with you. Okay, I wanted to throw a little bit in about GLPs because they are so popular, and there's so much information out there about how they can affect your gut health. And it is commonly known that GLP-1s, which is like semaglutide or tirzepatide, any of those, can affect your gut a little bit, and mostly side effects have to do with the decrease in like gastric emptying, so how fast your gut is digesting your food. And then it does help with cravings and appetite, but can also cause those side effects of maybe nausea or heartburn, or maybe changes in bowel movements. And so the reason I bring it up is because gut health is so important with this. And this slide actually shows, and we'll talk through it, but how the gut affects your natural production of GLP-1s. So GLP-1s are actually something that your body does naturally produce in your gut, mostly in your small intestine. And if we want that natural production, there are certain things we can do with the gut microbiome to support that. And the other thing I'll say is oftentimes if you already have gut stuff going on, if you start on a GLP-1, your symptoms might be worse. So gut health is really important, before, during, and after these GLPs. So a healthy gut microbiome, and you actually produce more GLP-1. So there's certain bacteria that can actually stimulate the production of this, and then prebiotics specifically are also very great for this. Short chain fatty acids, which I mentioned when we were going through the gut zoomer, are very important to produce GLP-1. It can actually release more of the GLP-1, and that helps with satiety and the same benefits that you would get from taking semaglutide, something like that. Helps to regulate metabolism, reduces inflammation, improves insulin sensitivity, and the main thing, like I said, for the short chain fatty acids is fiber, getting enough fiber. If you do have leaky gut or inflammation, you actually make, unfortunately, less GLP-1, which again is why it's so key to heal your gut and make sure things are working well. Okay, so let's talk about how to heal your gut. So I always recommend a personalized protocol based on your gut testing results, whatever those might be. But there is a great sort of well-known protocol to heal your gut, and that's the 5 R's. So remove, replace, repopulate, repair, and rebalance. And that's what this image is. So it goes a little bit more in depth, but basically remove is whatever you find, whatever is imbalanced, or if there's a bad bacteria or a parasite there or something else, you want to remove that. That could also include food sensitivities or allergies. Anything that pops up in that testing, you're going to want to remove so that you can heal. The second one is replacing it. So replacing irritants that support digestion. So these could be things that just support digestion further. Repopulate. So this is making sure that you're getting enough of the prebiotics, the probiotics, that can be with supplements or diet, to make sure that good bacteria is then taking over and it balances that gut microbiome. Restoring the gut. So this is oftentimes maybe anti-inflammatory stuff. I oftentimes use some gut healing powders that really help to soothe and heal that gut lining. So if you do have leaky gut, it helps to heal that, sort of get that lining back together. And then rebalance. So this is basically a long-term plan to make sure that the gut microbiome is balanced and it's not going to get out of whack again. I put a few foods that are really helpful for the gut. Fibers are such an important one. Probiotic rich foods, bone broth is really great. And then there are definitely some herbs and supplements, but I usually try to tailor that or personalize it based on, like I said, everyone's a little bit different on what they need. I got an interesting question about fecal transplantation in pill form. They do have some research on this. There are a couple supplements and that have been approved for this. And basically they take stool from healthy individuals and sort of break it down, get the good components, the good bacteria from it. And then you can take it as a supplement form. So that is one way. Like I said, there are a couple companies that are doing this, and I think it, for certain situations and certain conditions, it can be very helpful. But also you want to make sure that you're being supervised and someone's recommending like a good quality and all of that. But it is very interesting. I think there will be more research coming out on it for sure. Okay, and then just sort of to finish up, I wanted to give you guys some everyday tips to support your gut health. And these are just some of the basics, but again, I want to emphasize if you're having any gut health issues, it's really important to figure out what's going on, get to the root cause of it. And oftentimes that is done by testing, but these are just some of those sort of basics that you could make sure you're adding into your daily life. So the first one is eating more fiber. I know I've talked about fiber, but it honestly is so important for your gut. So a variety of, vegetables, fruits, seeds, legumes, beans, all of that stuff. I would aim for at least 25 to 35 grams per day. They also have research showing that if you aim for at least 30 plus different plant foods like vegetables, fruits, that kind of stuff per week, it increases your microbial diversity for optimal health. And then the other thing I'll say is fiber can be sometimes a little bit hard initially, cause maybe a little bit more bloating. Things like broccoli or Brussels sprouts that have a lot of fiber, you might notice that. And so if you're not used to it, you might need to start slow or find a form that works for you. So I put the hand out there of all the fiber-rich foods. There are definitely other ones, and there are supplements you can take, but those are some good ones you could add in. Okay, and then 2, including natural prebiotics and probiotics. There's some foods listed there for you. Prebiotics, garlic, onions, asparagus, bananas, lots of things there. Something I'll note is if you might have SIBO, it actually can be aggravated by prebiotics. So if you feel like you're eating these foods and it's making you worse, it might be a sign that you want to do some further testing. And then probiotics, fermented foods, yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, all of that stuff is really good for your gut as well. Staying hydrated. Water actually is so important for digestion, having regular bowel movements, the gut lining, the health of your gut. So that's very important. Stress we talked about and how that plays a direct role into your gut health. So, at least when you're eating, we can't always control our stress and everything that's going around, but at least when you're eating meals, if you can try to be more in a calm state or just focus on eating instead of multitasking, that will actually help with your digestion. And then additionally, deep breathing, meditation, journaling, walks, whatever works for you to help decrease stress will also be helpful for digestion. Moving your body, so exercise definitely promotes healthy gut motility, things moving as they should, and a good microbial balance. And that could be even, 15 to 20 minutes of walking can be helpful. Questions about a supplement, Primal Queen. Let me get through this slide and then I'll talk to you about supplements. Okay, so 6, minimize known gut irritants and maybe sensitivities or allergies. So basically, if you know something that is hurting your gut, that it doesn't make you feel good, limiting that or removing it or figuring out why it's causing that. Also things like ultra processed foods, fast food, refined sugars, artificial sweeteners, alcohol, medications if not necessary, all those things like we talked about can hurt your gut lining. So reducing or limiting as much as possible, that stuff. Sleep is so important for everything in the body, but even your gut microbes have a circadian rhythm. And so 7 to 9 hours of restful sleep is really going to support healing and recovery and rejuvenation of that gut microbiome. Chewing your food. This sounds so silly, right? Because we all just naturally chew our food. But digestion starts in the mouth. And there's a lot of recommendations that say at least 20 to 40 times, chewing at least 20 to 40 times per bite. And, might be interesting next time you're eating just to see about how many times you chew before you swallow. But that really does help to support optimal digestion. The other thing that's helpful is eating slower, which, I'm not the best at this either. I eat fast, but it's a good reminder for everyone that can help with nutrient absorption and decreasing bloating and supporting your digestion. Supporting digestion if needed. So if you need a little bit more support than just sort of these basics, bitters, enzymes, probiotics, gut healing herbs, L-glutamine is an amino acid that can be really helpful. Those can be great tools. But again, it's best to check with your provider and maybe do further testing to see exactly what would be indicated for you. And then eating meals actually 4 to 5 hours apart, if you have digestive issues, has been shown to be helpful instead of snacking all the time. And that basically gives your gut some time to get its natural movement and function in, which is called peristalsis. And so that is another tip. And then, like I said, make sure you're working with a practitioner to address any deeper imbalances or things that are going on so that you can actually feel your best. Any other questions? So I got a question about a supplement, Primal Queen. Um, I don't know a ton about this supplement. I believe it is a organ, like a beef organ supplement. I don't know the quality. I'm not opposed to, beef organ or organ supplements in general for certain situations for certain people, but I don't know the quality of Primal Queen. And I would just say it's always good to check with whoever you're working with to make sure whatever supplements you're taking are safe for you and with other stuff that you're taking. Any other questions? Nothing yet? All right. Let's see. The gut zoomer, I actually don't have the exact cost, but if you're interested, definitely give us a call and we can get that information to you. I believe they also might have payment plans, which can be nice. But yeah, just give us a call and our phone number will be up on the screen in just a sec, and then we can get that information for you. Another question, there has been news from plastics from water bottles. Does that cause gut symptoms? So yes, in short, yes. A lot of those sort of chemicals that are in plastics and stuff like that can affect your gut health and inflammation. And so it also can affect other things like your hormone health and, you know, increased risk of other conditions down the line. But I always try to recommend avoiding plastic water bottles, especially if you're here in Arizona and you leave the water bottles in the car and it's so hot that hot plastic leaches into the water and it's so bad for you. So switching to something like, a stainless steel or glass is always better for sure. Okay. And then some of you guys might know, but we do have our patient appreciation party tomorrow, and we would love to see you there. So this is just that information on where it is. It's at Postino's in Gilbert from 5 to 7 p.m. And everyone gets a raffle ticket if you come. And then if you bring a friend, you get an extra one. And we also have a great organization there, Kids Need to Read. So if you bring any children books, you also get an extra raffle ticket. So I just wanted to give you guys that information. I have a few more questions coming in, so let me see. A question, where in the body is good bacteria made and stored? So most of it is made in your gut. And really what happens is from the foods you eat, the things that you take in, supplements, maybe probiotics, so that good bacteria is produced there and then fed by probiotics. So all of that stuff is important, the types of food that you eat. And then it's mostly stored in your gut as well. And really what you want to make sure is that you have more of the good bacteria than the bad so that it's well balanced and it can beat out any of those bad things that are in your gut. Another question, does gut health also impact increase of UTI and bacterial vaginosis? Yes, absolutely. So there's also a microbiome in your vaginal tract and bladder and all of those areas. And so absolutely gut health plays a role in it. And that's oftentimes why certain probiotics will be recommended, because it helps support those good microbiomes that are going to help prevent any UTIs or BV or any of that kind of stuff. Is it better to purchase organic foods? I would say as a whole, yes, if you're able to, mostly because those other pesticides and stuff on the non-organic can harm your gut lining. and affect your gut. You guys might have also heard of the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. So that's a great, if you aren't able to buy organic everything, I think focusing on something like that where, there's a certain amount of foods that are known to be sort of worse for you if they're not organic. So focusing on something like that could be great. But as a whole, I would say yes, if you're able to. And then another question more about the GLPs. So with something like a GLP, if you're having symptoms first, like you're already having gut symptoms, it was just asked, would you suggest treating the gut first or getting a gut zoomer before I try the GLP? I think that depends, on your goals and where you're at, and the severity of your gut symptoms. I think treating the gut is going to be always helpful with everything. And so I would say yes, but also some people do them hand in hand. And depending on the severity and, what supplements you're taking to support your gut and all of that, it could be possible to do it together. But generally, I would say yes, treating your gut is going to help you feel better and get better benefits as well. Any other questions? I'm gonna go to the next slide, and this is just our information. So if you have any additional questions about the gut zoomers or other testing, or you have symptoms that you wanted to schedule with someone, just give us a call and we can get all of that set up for you. A couple other questions. If you believe you have SIBO, would you suggest doing an endoscopy or the gut zoomer? Endoscopies, unfortunately, don't usually diagnose SIBO. So SIBO, I usually do either the breath test, which is going to be specific for just SIBO, or the gut zoomer or tests like that, where you can sort of see that there's a link based on the bacteria. So I would likely do those if you think that you might have those symptoms that correlate with SIBO. Where does GLP-1 come from in the body? It comes from the gut, mostly in the small intestine, but definitely in the gut. Anything else? All right. Well, I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope you learned a little bit of something. There's so much information on gut health, and I do love it. I'm very passionate about it, but I hope it wasn't too overwhelming and you learned something. And yeah, if you have any other questions or need anything else, just give us a call. Thank you guys.